Born in Chicago, Illinois on February 4th of 1920, Sid Sackson grew up in a household that encouraged his interests in games from a very young age. His mother frequently brought him games that he played with his dad. And in addition to playing games, the young Sackson enjoyed breaking the games down and creating new variants to those that he found dull. Such efforts included modifying Uncle Wiggily into a war game and changing the dull Lotto into a solitaire empire builder. As a young man, he attended the City College of New York, where he completed a civil engineering degree. And during his years as a successful engineer, he worked on projects including the battleship Missouri, the aircraft carrier Yorktown, the Verrazano Narrows Bridge, and the World Trade Center. He resided in the Bronx, where he lived with his wife Bernice, and they raised 2 children. His wife, whom he married in 1941, shared his interest in puzzles and games, and the couple often entertained friends at their home with frequent board game nights. Family and friends were also often enlisted to help Sackson playtest his game designs. Now, his first published game was Poke, a poker variant that he submitted to Esquire in 1946. And despite inventing scores of games during this time period, he had very little luck in getting many of these designs published. In 1958, however, he had a chance encounter with another game designer who set him up with an agent, and Sackson was able to sell his game High Spirits to Milton Bradley in 1962. To Sackson's dismay, his serious game High Spirits was developed by the game publisher as the children's game High Spirits Calvin and the Colonel. And while it was a bittersweet moment, Sackson persevered, and he began to turn his solitaire Lotto game into the multiplayer hotel chain management game Acquire. This was published by the 3M Company in 1963, and it would be Sackson's greatest critical and financial success. In addition to designing games, Sackson was also an avid collector, eventually filling his house with over 15,000 games. He also collected file cabinets full of notes, reproductions, business contracts, and journals whose sole subject was board games. And this immense collection was indexed through Sackson's work diaries. In 1969, Sackson published a gamut of games which contained not only a collection of some of his board, card, and party games, but also an exhaustive index of games that were currently in print. And the book would serve as a source guide for several decades. By 1970, Sackson was making enough money to quit his engineering job and devote himself to designing games full-time. And over the next quarter of a century, he designed over 500 games, of which about 50 were published. His most notable games included Acquire, Can't Stop, Sleuth, Focus, Bazaar, Metropolis, Monad, Take 5, and Venture. And his games were particularly popular in Germany, where they heavily influenced the Eurogame designers, whose work has dominated the board gaming world since the mid-1990s. Sadly, by this time, Sackson's health was declining, and after spending a number of years in a nursing home, he passed away on November 6th of 2002. Tragically, his immense collection of games, which he always desired to remain complete in a museum, was divided into lots that were scattered in an auction to collectors, though a sizable portion of the collection, including Sackson's indexes and notes, were purchased by the Strong Museum of Play in Rochester, New York. Now, Acquire came out in 1963, and it was designed by Sid Sackson. Its original publisher was 3M. It then was published by Avalon Hill under their Bookcase Games series, and then it's gone through a whole bunch of other publishers, and it's still being published today under Hasbro's Avalon Hill license. It's a game of strategical investment in hotel chains with attempts to control a majority of those chains' stocks. Now, this process is complicated by the merger of these chains as they grow, and it quickly changes who has controlling interest in the chains, and it increases those chains' value. And bonuses from mergers can also be reinvested, stock can be bought, sold, and traded. And like games such as Monopoly, the object of the game is to collect as much money as possible. But Acquire ain't your daddy's Monopoly. To set the game up, you place the hotel tiles upside down next to the board, and you mix them thoroughly. Then each player is given an information card and $6,000. Now, the remainder of the cash is kept in the bank, which is also known as the stock market in this game. To determine who plays first, each player draws one hotel tile and places it in a matching square on the board. And if 2 or more hotels are placed adjacent to each other at this time, they do not create a chain. And the player placing the lowest number on the board starts. In a case of a tie for low number, then the letter nearest the beginning of the alphabet starts. For example, a 2B would beat a 2E or a 3A. Now, each player then draws 6 hotel tiles from the table, and they place them in a row so that only they can see the tiles. Now, each player's turn consists of 3 actions. The first is to place one of their hotels on its matching square on the board. And if this hotel creates a chain or causes a merger, then all transactions connected with the creating chains or merging chains are completed before the player's turn continues. They then have the option of buying stocks. So if after placing their hotel, there are one or more hotel chains on the board, the player may, if they wish, buy stock in one or more of them. Finally, they end their turn by drawing another hotel to replace the one that they've played. And play always occurs in a clockwise fashion. Now, when a player places a hotel next to one that's already on the board, that is rank and file, not diagonally, they create a hotel chain. And tiles can be added every turn to expand those chains. And if during the setup 2 or more hotels were placed adjacent to each other, the player adding another adjacent hotel would create the chain. Now, the player who first creates the chain chooses the name of the chain from the 7 listed on the information card, and they then place the chain marker of the corresponding color atop any hotel in that chain. They then receive a founder's bonus of 1 free block of stock in that chain. And if, as occasionally sometimes happens late in the game, the stock market has no available stock in that chain, then the founder's bonus is not issued. Now, there's a maximum of 7 chains that can be on the board at any one time, and any hotel that would create an 8th chain can't be placed. Now, after they've placed their hotel, they buy their stock. They can buy stock in any active chain up to the maximum of 3 blocks of stock in any one turn. This purchase could be in 1, 2, or 3 different chains, and all the money made for the stock purchases are paid directly to the stock market. Now, the price that they pay is determined by the number of blocks or hotels that exist in the chain that the player is trying to buy the shares in. And this information is kept on your information card. Now, while a player has to play a block every turn, buying shares is entirely optional, and the player may not be able to buy shares if they don't have enough money. Now, note that the only time that a player can raise money by selling stock is during the disposal period after a merger, which we'll talk about in just a second. Also note that trading and selling of stock between players is not permitted, since all transactions are with the stock market. And when all stock in one chain has been sold, then the players wishing to purchase stock have to do so in any of the other active chains that still have stock for sale. Now, when a player places a hotel adjacent to 2 or more chains, then this causes a merger, and the chain with the greater number of hotels takes over the smaller one. And if the chains were the same size before the merging hotel was placed, then the merger maker can choose which chain takes over the other. The chain marker of the defunct chain is removed, and it's returned to the stock market. Now, a chain that contains 11 or more hotels is safe, and it can't be taken over by another chain, and a player cannot place a hotel that would merge 2 safe chains. However, a safe chain could take over a chain with 10 or less hotels. Now, when mergers occur, there's a payout, and the stock market pays compensatory bonuses to the 2 largest shareholders in the defunct chain. And you can see on the information card there's a majority holders bonus for first and second place. Now, in the case of a tie for the largest shareholder, first and second bonuses are simply combined and divided equally between the tying shareholders. And if bonuses don't divide equally into even $100 amounts, then the tying players receive the next greater amount. Now, in case of a tie for the second largest shareholder, the second bonus is divided equally between the tying players. Additionally, if only one player holds stock in a defunct chain, they receive both of the bonuses. Now, after the majority holders' bonuses have been paid, each player, starting with the merger maker and continuing clockwise, handles his stock in the defunct chain in one or more of the following ways. They can hold the stock. This is usually an expectation of starting another chain with that name. They can sell the stock, and the stocks can be sold to the stock market at the price determined by the number of hotels in the defunct chain before the merger. Or they can trade the stock, and stocks can be traded on the basis of 2 blocks of defunct stock for 1 block of the controlling chain stock. And if the stock market has no remaining blocks of controlling chain stock, then the player can't make this trade. Occasionally, a multiple merger will occur, and this is mergers where there's more than 2 chains. Basically, the largest chain takes over the smaller chains simultaneously. And the multiple merger is basically handled as 2 smaller individual mergers. The majority holders' bonuses are paid for the larger of the defunct chain, and players dispose of their stock in this chain. Then the smaller defunct chain is handled in the same manner. Now, in case of a tie, the merger maker chooses the defunct chain to be handled first, and bonuses and stock prices are determined by the number of hotels in the defunct chain before the merger. Now, at the end of their turn, a player who has any permanently unplayable tiles, and those are hotels which would merge 2 or more safe chains, can set those aside out of the game and draw new ones to replace them. And if all 6 of their hotels are unplayable, they're prohibited from playing a tile, but may, irregardless of having unplayable tiles, still buy shares of chains during their turn. Now, the game ends when one player, during their turn, announces that either all the chains on the board are safe, or that one single chain contains 41 or more hotels. And a player doesn't have to announce that the game is over if it's to their advantage to continue playing. Now, after announcing that the game is over, then the player can finish that turn. At that point, majority holder bonuses are paid for all the active chains, and all players sell their stock to the stock market. Now, stock in a chain that's not on the board is worthless. The victory in this game is simple. The player with the most money is the winner. So one way to improve your strategy for Acquire is to think of the game's early, middle, and late game. Now, the early game is the opening moves up until the time players start running out of cash. The middle game occurs from the cash crunch until there are one or two larger chains left on the board, and there's very little room left to start small chains. And the late game is the last few turns of the game where the large chains are just mopping up the remaining small chains. Now, in the early game, look over your tiles and try to place tiles towards the center of the board. Of course, if you have an opportunity to start a chain by placing a tile down next to another lone tile, do it. The starting bonus is always free money. Also invest in small chains and push for merging them with large chains. Now, money stuck in large chains is pretty much dead, and you aren't going to be able to cash it out during the game, so you might as well use it to buy stock. Now, in the early game, place a priority on merging companies for the cash and cash out your shares so that you can continue to buy shares in other companies. Small chains that are gobbled up and sold ensure a pretty steady supply of cash, and this reduces those cashless turns at the end of the early game where you're sitting around twiddling your thumbs. Now, as I said, it's better to invest in chains closer to the center of the board. If you start a company on the edge of the board, choose a more expensive one. That way, you can probably retain control of the company, which will probably not be attractive to other buyers, by controlling only 3 or 4 shares. And if somebody wants to fight you for that company, let them spend all their money on the expensive shares, unless it looks like there's going to be an imminent merger. Now, after you've stabilized your cash and entered the mid-game, you'll have more choices on buying shares in the chains on the board. And when looking at which stock shares you should buy, try to break your choices down into 3 groups. The first group is the avoid group. If 2 other players have bought at least 3 shares before you've even had a chance to buy a stock, it probably isn't worth fighting them for control. And this often happens with the first chain of the game. There's also the minority group. Now, during the mid-game, you're going to need your money, but you may see opportunities to own a little stock in a company. And this particularly applies to those stocks that only one player has all the shares of. Now, remember that gaining minority shares in these companies can produce high payouts for a sole shareholder, and you want to try to prevent your opponents from doing this. Finally, there's the majority group. And these are stocks that you want to control and focus on getting the majority bonus. They're usually chains in the middle of the board, or at least not on the sides. Now, when a company merges and is bought out, you have to figure out what you're going to do with your shares. Now, if the larger company in a merger is a majority group company, trade your shares of your smaller company into your larger company. And in the mid-game, when you have enough money to buy most available shares of stock, considering holding some of the shares after the merger so that you'll have more shares when companies reborn later in the game. However, as you start to see an end in sight, quit doing this, as you'll be stuck with stocks of companies that don't stand a chance of making it onto the board in the late game. Also, hang on to specific tiles that will allow you to merge companies in the future. These provide you with an advantage, and you can place some money in these companies for a few turns before merging them into a bigger company. Now, as I mentioned before, the late game only lasts for a few rounds, and this is the ideal time to cash out any money you've got in the few small chains when they get gobbled up. And now is also the time to unload those merger tiles that you've saved. Finally, as an overview, remember there's 25 shares in each chain. 13 shares will ensure a majority bonus, 9 for a guaranteed second majority bonus, and 8 for a tied second majority bonus. Of course, if 2 players were racing you for the majority status, you'd only have to get 10 shares to get that minority bonus. Okay, we are starting with Acquire. Now, this is probably one of my favorite games of all time. I'd put it up there with Stratomatic Baseball, maybe Power Grid, and the card game Hearts for games that I'm always up to play. And I'm using this little computer program. I'll put a link down below on how to get this file so that you can play if you want. I'm not saying it's ideal, but it is a pretty fast way to learn how to play the game and develop a little bit of strategy. Again, it's not perfect. Usually I can beat this about 75% of the time, so it's not super hard, but it'll at least, if you're new to acquire, it is one way to kind of get better at it and improve some of your strategy. If you're a good acquire player and you just want to crank out some games, it might be kind of fun for you, but I've enjoyed it. Okay, with this software we have 4 players. I have Ike, George, Irwin, and Monty. And I am going to be playing as Ike. So we'll set it up for a 4-player game, and we hit start. Okay, real quick overview of the board. The game board is up here where you place your tiles. Here's where the shares are located. It tells you the number of shares, the number of shares remaining, and the price, and then also the size of the shares. Down here is where your money is. I'm Ike, so my amount of cash is right here, and then the columns are the chains that I own, and then the rows will be how many shares of each chain. There's my tiles down here. You can see all 6 of them, and then there's a switch or a button when I'm done. You also have an instructor or assistant that can kind of help you out a little bit if you want. Tells you the number of tiles remaining and the number of blanks left. So that is it. Oh, there's your number of turns also down there. And I think that gives you kind of a brief overview. It's a little different than the board, but close enough that you can obviously go from this to a regular game of Acquire. So we've had 2 players already play. I think it's Irwin and Monty that have already played. I'm going to move this over just a little bit. You'll see why in just a second. Looking at my tiles, I've got T65, T29. This is a little different than the proprietary board, but kind of works the same way. Okay, there's what I want. I want that T54, T64. 48, what's that? What else is down there? 48 and 19. Okay, so we'll start with T64, and I'm just going to finish for this turn. There's nothing else I can do. And hit done. And there's our first chain set up. Now you notice people start to buy that almost immediately, but I'm not. I ain't no fool. Okay, let's go T65. And let's make it, I think we'll go with Festival. So I get a share of Festival. I can buy it cheap right now. Let me pull this down here so you can see it. And I will finish. And then my turn is done, so I hit done. And more tiles are laid. Okay, there's Imperial has just popped up. Let's see. I think I'm going to add to my chain here. And I think I'll buy 3 of Imperial. Okay, now I control, you'll notice down here, I have 4 shares of Festival, controlling it, and 3 shares of Imperial. Saxon, everybody else is fighting over, so I'll let them fight. I hit done. Oh, and I'm growing. Okay. And at this point, don't want to really give him any more, I don't want to give Saxon any more play, so I'm not going to use that T24 there. 48, and let's go with 48. I still control Imperial. I'm racing on Festival, and it's in the middle, so it's probably one that I need to buy shares on. So I'm going to buy 3 more shares and accept and finish. And I hit done. Saxon's growing. I have a feeling it'll be probably one of the major chains of the game. Okay, let's see what my tiles are. And so I want to play tiles towards the center. I'll play that one. Now Imperial I'm tied with. I think I'll buy 2 shares of Imperial and 1 of Festival. Oh! Festival got bought out. I just noticed here's what the price of shares are. I'm not sure if they follow the actual proprietary rules of acquire for their share prices, but let's see. I got 2 and 1, so that's fine. 2 shares of Imperial, 1 of Festival. So we'll accept that and finish and done. Okay. Oh, Imperial. I still got shares of Imperial to buy. I can start another chain. Let's start with American. And American, I want to buy Imperial. Imperial has 8 left, so I can get 3. Oh, I don't have enough money. Okay, that gives me 200, and so this is really the kind of the end of the early game here. I'm hitting the cash crunch here. I only have 200. I say gold pieces. $200 left. Okay, and we're done. So we're waiting for a merger. I guess 200 is any share. No shares. I can't buy any shares. So all I can really do is play a tile, which I'm going to do here and start a chain. Probably nobody's going to buy that one, but that's okay. I should have started with an expensive chain there. Okay, done. Oh, I'm back. Okay. I think I'll hold on to. There's no reason to grow worldwide yet, and I think I'll just grow Festival a little bigger since I control it. So Festival and Imperial are the 2 that I need to merge somehow. It would be nice if I had either T176 or T67. Okay. Yeah, that's worth it, and that's worth. Okay, we'll do this one. I don't have any money, so I can't buy any shares. And if you're really lucky, you can make that little switch from the early game where you actually are able to merge two chains that you own and get a little money back. But wasn't that lucky in this game. Okay. Man, I'd like to buy some of those tower shares. I'll just do that. We'll just buy some more time for Imperial. I don't think, yeah, there's nobody here. There's no new chains left. So hang on to that. I don't want to buy out Tower. I do have an American. And I'm a majority shareholder there. Okay. Imperial's taken off, which is good. I guess we'll just increase. Oh, I can't buy shares. Nobody has any money. I've got 200, but that's it. Okay, Saxon's been dissolved in an acquisition and merged into Imperial. So it doesn't give me any money. I have no shares to sell, and I don't think I can trade any. There's nothing to trade with Saxon here. So I can't do anything here. So there, I'll come back to that later. Irwin made a lot of money there. Let's start a new chain here. That gives me a share. Man, there's just not a lot of mergers happening in this game. Okay, here we go. So festivals dissolved. Now I got some cash finally. Now you'll notice here this allows me to sell shares, which I do need the cash on, and then trade for Imperial so I can gain more Imperial. Now there's only one Imperial stock, but I'm going to definitely hold that, and then I'm going to sell the rest of these. So if I get this one trade, then that'll give me 8 stocks of Imperial, which will give me majority share. If I do this, I need the rest of it for cash. So we'll accept that, and I'm not gonna probably get another green one right now. So festival, I need the money. So okay, now let's buy some shares, and let's buy Tower out. And there we go. Now we've got majority of Tower. Okay. Oh, I had majority of Tower. Okay, now didn't work out quite like I wanted, so we're going to move here, and I'm going to buy more shares of Tower. I'm going to buy a share of Tower, and I think I'll buy a share of American. And it's my three that I can buy. So we'll finish that. Now, hopefully nobody else will buy out Tower. Okay, Continental. Let's see, how much did I have in Continental? I had nothing in Continental, so nothing I can do there. Okay, now let's buy up Imperial. No more. So do I want to sell? Again, I think we're running out of room on the board. There's no place for new ones to go. So you can see here there's no places that aren't going to be touching some other chain. So it's best just to cash out now. And then we're going to buy shares, and I think I'm going to buy up Continental. Accept, finish. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to gobble, 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 gobble. I'm all the way through. I sound like a turkey. Okay, now then. And Continental. Now we're going to place one on Continental. Not quite yet. Okay, now we want to buy shares. Now Continental, I have 3, and Worldwide, I have 2. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, accept, finish. So now I have majority in Worldwide, which I want. I got majority in Continental, which I want. Tower, I'm not too worried about. And then I'm not going to be able to gobble up American. Saxon would be nice to gobble up, but everybody's bought it out. So there we go. So the goal is to buy, okay, Saxon, that's fine. I don't own any Saxon. So now my goal is to own Worldwide and Continental. Everybody's bought Continental. Okay. And we want to buy shares of Continental. Accept, finish. Now I should have, 7 shares of Continental. I think I'm good. Okay. Oh, they sold Worldwide. That's okay. I'll sell all my shares. And that was it. So I came in second in the game. Probably would have done better if I would have not had that big, long period where I had no cash. So it happens really fast. It's over. If I would have been able to get Continental there, and had a majority ownership of it, that would have helped too. So anyway, play with this a little bit. I think you'll find it a fairly interesting little simulation for the game. And like I say, you can play it. I've spent more time talking about the rules than actually playing the game itself, but hopefully you get an idea of how to play it if you've never played it before. Anyway, that's what I've got. This is a little shorter this week. I appreciate you guys watching. I really do. If you have any specific games you'd like to see me cover, let me know. I'd be interested in finding out what you guys are interested in, and I guess we'll talk to you later. Thanks a lot. Bye.